Welcome to the stage, Emmy-nominated storyteller and filmmaker Jason Silva, and award-winning artist, writer, academic, and founder of the Psychedelic puppet show, Brad Necyk.
Hello. Hi, guys. How's it going? Summit 2024. Well, thank you guys for coming out. I know that Summit series is a choose your own adventure. So the fact that you guys are here meant that you chose to join us in this experience. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, my name is Jason Silva. For those that don't know me, I'm a filmmaker and former television presenter. And this is Brad Necyk, my collaborator on this short film, a brilliant artist. So before we screen the Psychedelic puppet show, I just want to set up a little bit of context for you, and also to kind of connect it to the theme of Summit this particular session or this particular year, which is personal and professional optimization. So I believe in the context of personal and professional optimization, we have to optimize our psyches, and part of optimizing our psyches and our psychology involves facing our demons, internalizing our shadow, doing the work, healing our fractures, facing our dragons and our monsters. And increasingly in the world today, as you know, there is a mental health crisis. According to the World Health Organization, more people die by suicide than die from natural disasters and armed conflict combined. So the devils in our minds are really taking a lot of lives. At the same time, we're living through this psychedelic renaissance. As you guys know, there's clinical trials that have been happening around the world, and we're seeing incredible results on the back of these interventions where these medicines allow us access to realms within where we can really integrate and transmute and transform and basically explore those ineffable landscapes of our inner life. Now, one of the interesting things about psychedelic experiences is, once all this transformation happens, all these insights happens, all this visionary understanding happens, is how do we integrate these experiences? How do we bring them out of hyperspace into something that we can work with in the default world? How do we metabolize, digest, and articulate something that is largely ineffable and unmappable and that exists beyond the literal grid and beyond the empirical world? And I think that the best way to assimilate and integrate an experience of altered states of consciousness is by turning to art, right? Take your broken heart and turn it into art. Go to poetry, go to music, go to painting, right? And thank you. And I think the reason for this is because the realms beyond the literal grid have to be articulated with poetic license. I think it's a sin to engage in literalism or fundamentalism when trying to make sense of the ineffabilities of psychedelic spaces. In fact, I think it's the first step to ego aggrandizement and corruption to come out of a psychedelic trip and be like, I know the truth, and here's my new scripture, and here's my new Bible, and follow me now, right? It just creates cultish behavior and self-righteousness that I think is the opposite of what we're supposed to learn in these psychedelic spaces. And so again, the interest is in finding new ways of creatively and artfully mapping these domains, and that's the role of art, painting, and poetry. And increasingly, and this is what this film is about, the role, I think, of artificial intelligence. One of the most exciting things about AI is that it allows us, with a few words, to generate impossible things, to instantiate the imagination. It allows for the imagination to literalize its own instantiation, to summon its own literalization in ways that we've never been able to before. It's just these AI tools are allowing us to collapse the space and the lag between our dreams, between our visions, between our psychedelic trips, and works of art that can exist in the world and that can be shared with others. So having said that, 6 months ago, I connected with this genius right here who conceived of the psychedelic puppets. This is Brad Necyk, and yes, thank you. Look at that. And so I want to invite Brad to share some thoughts, but basically I discovered him on Instagram where he was making these 30-second or 1-minute revisionist history clips where heroes of psychedelic culture like Aldous Huxley and Tim Leary and Terence McKenna would retell, or we would hear a retelling of the psychedelic trip that changed their life. But in this revisionist history or retelling, they would get visited by a strange motley crew of psychedelic puppets, which were these absurdist figurines that nonetheless were mouthpieces for the music from the spheres, right? So they had wisdom, but they were absurd. And I thought this is genius because it bridges the sacred and the profane. It makes fun of the sacred, and it takes silly things seriously. And I just thought it was a brilliant project. So I reached out to Brad and I was like, can we expand the world? Can I write a story? Can I tell a story? And but Brad, maybe perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you came up with the concept of the puppets.
Yeah, so hi. Hi. Yeah. It's so bright, I can't see anybody. It's disorienting to not have eyes to look at. But I was at a psychedelic summit, so not like doing psychedelics, but we were people like therapists and financiers and business people and academics and neuroscientists, and all these people were together. And we were all trying to dream up like, psychedelics are kind of moving forward, but like what else can we do? And so all these people are visioning retreats and new scientific studies and all these different things. And it just so happened the group that I was with like kept joking about that, like, MAPS is doing a good job or did a good job, but they didn't succeed. I don't know if you weren't noticing this August, but the FDA didn't approve it, and their model was following the scientific approach, like legitimize it through objectivity. And we were like, okay, this is going along, and we were pretty hopeful that it was going to work towards rescheduling of some kind. But we thought there's still more work to be done, and we thought that, the absurd, the poetic, the fun, the artistic would be an avenue to do that. And we were going around just joking about like what that could look like, and puppets kept coming up. And, like an artist often is waiting like an insect waits, and then they pounce. And I heard this idea of the psychedelic puppets. So I stuck together with a few of these people and we formed a nonprofit called the Psychedelic Puppet Show, not knowing what we're doing. And I just started making Instagram reels, and a bunch of them were just not working and they're visual experiments. And then I guess I might have caught on to something with this Albert Hoffman voice and these revisionist histories, and they kind of like all worked, and we met and we've been having a blast for about 6 months. We talk daily, making art, having revelations, laughing, and enjoying ourselves.
It's the most fun that I've had in a really long time. And from a storytelling perspective, I've always been interested in finding artful ways of communicating the ineffable dimension of the human experience. So how do we talk about love? How do we talk about longing? How do we talk about sadness? How do we talk about the supernatural and the transcendental and just the things that cannot be mapped in ordinary language? And that's where film has always been a great tool for me. Short form filmmaking, usually me narrating these videos has been kind of my career as a presenter and communicator. But with this tool, what you're going to see is I could remove myself from it completely and bring something that was more like unmediated imagination. So what you're going to see in this is, hint, hint, true story, but not really. It takes a lot of poetic license, but it's narrated by the AI cloned voice of Albert Hoffman. Now, for those that don't know, Albert Hoffman was the guy that synthesized LSD for the first time, and today is the 86th anniversary of him actually synthesizing LSD. Imagine that. Crazy, right? Insane. And today is also the anniversary. Oh, today is also Terence McKenna's birthday. So imagine that. Insane. But in any case, by channeling Albert Hoffman as the narrator of this absurdist psychedelic fable, which is meant to be seen either as a film, a dissertation, a short story, a fairy tale, or just a poem, just let it wash over you. But what we're trying to achieve here is something that marries subject and object, especially when talking about psychedelic experience. So the Albert Hoffman narration, he represents the dry scientist, the empirical description, the account of the events that is empirical. So his dry delivery contrasted with the fucking insane imagery that we created. The imagery showcases subjectivity. So his narration is objective, the images is subjective. And we're trying to marry what Ursula Le Guin said, which is science describes accurately from the outside, Poetry describes accurately from the inside. Science explicates, but poetry implicates. And both celebrate what they describe. So pay attention to that, because again, it's an experiment in trying to show inside outside when talking about some of the most difficult to describe psychological experiences we can have. But I truly believe that there can be a new literacy born by using AI to paint our insides and turn our insides out, to show the impossible thing to show and share it with others. So what we're going to do now is we're going to screen the 11-minute film, and then afterwards we'll have a few more words for you, and then we're going to close by teasing the sequel, which the technology has already advanced like 10x in the last 6 months, so you can see where the future is going. But again, think of this as like a living dream, all right? I hope you guys enjoy the next 11 minutes. Listen to the words. There's a lot of philosophy in here and a lot of, yeah. Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you.
After some years of being driven by the manic desire for professional success, television presenter Jason Silva found himself at a creative and professional crossroads. His neuroticism and self-defeating thought patterns reaching an intolerable fever pitch. Was this anxiety or depression or both? All he knew was that he was no longer satisfied by so-called consensus reality and ego-driven status games. He ached instead for something decidedly more alive, something infinitely more mysterious. Unbeknownst to him, a strange council of psychedelic puppets has begun to gather invisibly around him. They'd received note of his plight and had decided to puppeteer a tie-dyed mythopoetic intervention. Driven by some strange poetic urge, Jason escaped to the world's most liberal city, the whimsical and delightful Amsterdam, where 17th century psychedelic canals crisscross crooked houses that stretched the known laws of physics, while thousands of cyclists soared through the paradisical landscape. One day, while gallivanting across the colorful Amsterdam canals, a series of synchronistic maneuvers landed Jason across a strange and irradiating figure, a hierophanous, pulsating, self-transforming elf machine, dressed like a long-haired blonde Latvian riding a bicycle. His name was Edgars. This psychedelic trickster quickly became a friend. An instant kinship was formed, based on a shared love of magical realism, the sacred sublime, slapstick absurdity, and childlike wonder. Together, they went on a series of achingly beautiful psychedelic bike rides in the Dutch countryside, inspired by the classic accidental LSD bicycle trip first experienced by yours truly. It was precisely at the peak of an ecstatic cannabis bicycle reverie that Jason Silva and his sidekick Edgars Matusevic first saw the psychedelic puppets. As the duo soared across the landscape, their bicycles practically levitating off the ground, music blasting with rapture, the psychedelic puppets appeared across the sky like giant faces in the clouds. The shimmering kaleidoscopic revelation of it all stopped them in their tracks. A stupefied amazement bewitched both Jason and Edgars, gobsmacked by how much truth seemed to beam from these trickster figures as they draped the cosmos with their colorful, whimsical, free-floating presence. The shimmering puppets seemed suspended in midair. As they began speaking in some kind of translinguistic alphabet, communicating the felt presence of immediate experience. Their telepathic virtuosity disclosing rich tapestries of felt meaning. As all contradictions seemed to instantly reconcile, their utterances an explosive manifestation of the mysterious tremendum that Jason had read so much about in his searching. The puppets proceeded to deliver an ecstatic dissertation on the art of what Timothy Leary called internal freedom, or what comparative literature Professor David Lenson called stewardship of internal life. What is disliked must be avoided, but what is enjoyed must be enjoyed with contemplative exactitude, said the puppets, with the weight of divine truth. The real secret is time dilation, said the puppets. You must learn to bracket yourself off from strict chronometry, what E. E. Cummings called the colossal hoax of calendars and clocks, and enter instead a fusion of cognition and dream. This is nothing new, continued the puppets. The ancient Greeks also made this distinction between two modes of perception, chronos, or mechanized everyday reality, and kairos, which is poetic time. But know this, warned the puppets. Once you become accustomed to constructing consciousness according to this cognitive quantum mechanics, the return to a Newtonian universe will be difficult to achieve. Such a reversion, it will seem to you, would require a renunciation of joy and play, of insight and vision, and of privileged knowledge and perception. It would entail a return to mechanized cognition. Jason and Edgar listened intensely, mouths gaped wide in astonishment, empowered by this knobs and levers approach to the shaping of their subjectivity. How dizzying, the vertigo of freedom, they said to themselves. Beholding such blazing insight eventually gave way to a bout of irresistible hilarity as Jason and Edgar succumbed to a laughing fit to end all laughing fits, nature's epileptoid catharsis. Rolling on the grass alongside a cuddle puddle of psychedelic puppets passing cannabis joints around, the duo experienced the ecstasy of understanding. The puppets continued to hold space as more revelations followed. Channeling the illustrious William Blake while breaching the chrysalis of limited perception, the puppets evoked the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. They held infinity in the palm of their hands and eternity in an hour. In Aldous Huxley's words, they were seeing what Adam had seen on the morning of his creation, the miracle, moment by moment, of naked existence, the miracle of seeing things in all of their suchness. Eventually, through the sheer aesthetic force of their articulation, the puppets distilled the complex abstractions of astrophysics and consciousness, matter and mind, neurons and nebula, into singular expressions of color and light, poetry and prose, vindicating Keats' famous couplet, "Beauty is truth. Truth is beauty." Ecstatic, maniacal laughter ensued. But remember these words by Flaubert. You must be disciplined and orderly in your life so that you can be violent and original in your work. Eventually the sun began to set. Impossibly beautiful purple and orange hues filled the sky. It was time to go. Jason and Edgar's blasted away on their bicycles as the psychedelic puppets waved goodbye. "But wait," said Jason to the puppets. "Who are you? Where do you come from? Others need to know." The puppets turned, smiled, and seemed to search for the right turn of phrase, a way to articulate the paradox they embodied. "How about this?" offered the puppets, turning to an ancient, mysterious manuscript written by Jamie Wheel. As they opened the scrolls, rays of blinding light beamed from the pages. They began to read. "We are some things to all people, and all things to some. We are a stand-in, an ink blot, a scarecrow on fire. We are your future, your past, and truth-telling liars. We are the lie that reveals the truth. They closed the mysterious book and handed it to Jason. It was filled with poetry and prose, a literary holy of holies, written in the style of Dr. Seuss. With this, the psychedelic puppets dissolved into a refracting lens, revealing themselves to be a trans-dimensional intelligence beaming from Jason's inner world. The puppets blended into Jason and Edgar's until the two became indistinguishable from the puppets. From this moment onwards, Jason became a full-time artist. Together with his sidekick, the blonde Latvian long-haired dreamer of dreams, Jason recorded a rhapsodic stream of consciousness disclosures that lit up the world. Soon after, a manic pixie dream girl, possessed by the puppets herself, enamored Jason into a whirling dervish. Together, they had twin girls and a litter of psychedelic puppets, and spent their days uttering ecstatic proclamations of amazement, gratitude, and grace, while riding their electric cargo bikes with their twin girls, a dog, and the puppets into the sunset of the Dutch countryside.
Thank you, guys. Wow, that was a trip. Thank you. Wow, you're beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. Thank you. Wow. That's amazing. Holy shit. Wow. Wow, you're too kind. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. That's amazing. So that was my first time ever like writing a story. So I wrote that on a hike with my dad in Mallorca after some great cannabis. And after I had collaborated, we had done a 1-minute piece, which is the reason we're here. Jody, thank you, Jody, for inviting us. She had seen a preview. Thank you. And she was like, we have to bring the puppets to Summit. And we're like, well, we're going to work on a longer film. And then I wrote that after a hike. And what I was able to integrate all of my favorite philosophers, all of my obsessions and my worldviews, and put everything into it. And I tell people the first 2/3 is a true story. I really do live in Amsterdam. I really do go on magical bike rides. I really do have a friend named Edgar's. And, as to whether the puppets are real, they're real the way poetry is real. They're real the way metaphors are real. They're real in the sense that they're beyond the literal grid. But that's not the same as saying they're physically real, right? So in any case, that was a wonderful experience, and this beautiful man helped realize those images, so give it a round of applause. You want to say something?
Should I take over?
No, if you want to say something, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was...
Your experience.
Yeah. It was really fun watching it with the group. I've only ever watched it with myself. My 8-year-old daughter saw it once, and she's just I don't know what she experienced, but she liked it. She really likes the psychedelic puppets. And no, it was just so phenomenal to share it with many, many consciousnesses at once. It's really fun as an artist to do that.
Yeah. I mean, what I enjoy, and this was the first, this is the second time we show it, first time in this part of the world, but it's interesting to see your reactions, that people kind of got it. Because I'm talking about a lot of dense philosophical ideas that I love, but I'm also making fun of myself at the same time, which I think is the way that we deflate the self-righteousness and the aggrandizement that can happen when we have an experience where so much revelation seems to be coming through. How do we avoid turning ourselves into cultish, like I know the answer and now I'm a shaman because I have a one trip. For me, it's thank you, yeah. So it's a way of just keeping it light, keeping it funny, keeping it sacred, but keeping it absurd at the same time, because, the answer is the mystery, and the mystery is the answer, right, as Terence McKenna said. So we're working on a sequel, and we're going to show you the preview, the first 2 minutes of the sequel. The technology has advanced so much that now we're approaching photorealism. I mean, I wanted the first one to feel like a fable. The next one feels like a film. And we're spoofing Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. And this is the arrival of the psychedelic puppets. It's kind of like the white paper that explains what the puppets are, okay? And so we're going to show you the opening of that, and that'll be the last 3 minutes, and then we'll be here if you guys want to jam about it. Thank you, Summit, for having us, and thank you for your beautiful people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow.
Here are some of the many things we don't know about the psychedelic puppets. Who are they? Trying to answer this in any meaningful way is hampered by the fact that outside of being able to see them and hear them, the puppets leave absolutely no footprint. They are something marvelous and mysterious, glittering, shimmering, shedding light of many colors, movement, sound, a transformative hierophany of integrated perception, as Terence McKenna would say. The complex wave of the angel peacock, iridescent, transformative mystery. Yet the chemical makeup of their bodies is unknown. They emit no waste, no gas, no radiation. Assuming that the puppets communicate with each other, they do so without detection. The air between the puppets is untroubled by sonic emission or light waves.